Roger.
Hi there, I am Catherine Mattice. I am the conference chair this year for the International Association on Workplace Bullying and Harassment. This is the first time the conference has been in the United States. I'm in San Diego, so that's where it's going to be. I'm very excited to have all of these presentations coming. I've been working on the agenda today, actually, and we've got over 100 presentations, we've got workshops and posters, and it's going to be cool. So I've got one of the speakers here with me. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you'll be talking about at the conference?
Yes, thank you, Catherine. So my name is Patrick Bruce. I'm an assistant lecturer in Technological University here in Dublin in Ireland. And we have written a little paper. When I say we, me and a couple of colleagues, so Dr. Victor Highmark, my sister, Dr. Carol Bruce, and a couple of colleagues from University College Limerick, Professor Patricia Mannix-McNamara and Niamh Hickey, have all written a paper. It's actually a paper that stems from research that I've done for my PhD, but it's basically the causes and effects of stress amongst school leaders and what causes them to get stressed and how they cope with it and what are the sources of that, you know?
Yeah, what were some of the sources? I would imagine.
Okay, yes. So I mean, I think it's interesting when you go into these studies, because I have taught in education for a long time, and when you go into these studies, there are expectations that you perceive before you start. So, for example, I thought it was going to be the students are driving all the teachers and the school principals mad, and it turned out it actually wasn't that at all. So I guess just some of the main findings that we found. We interviewed 12 school leaders through a semi-structured interview method. So we used interpretive phenomenological analysis in about a 40-minute interview to speak to 12 school leaders, in-depth interviews about what their experiences were. And briefly, firstly, they had all experienced stress in school. That was the first thing. The second thing was about 50% of those school leaders or principals had become ill or had some kind of a health problem from stress in school. So where the stress was coming from, according to our research, was from other teachers. They spent a lot of time trying to resolve what we call conflict or interpersonal conflict between one teacher and another teacher. Very often we found that the conflict was very easily started and it may have went on for a really long time. And it may have actually even defined the relationship that those teachers and school leaders had with each other. And it caused big problems for school leaders because in our secondary school system over here in Ireland, we have a system whereby one teacher leaves a class and another teacher comes in. So if you're in conflict with someone, you're constantly bumping into this person. Then you have to meet them in the staff room. Then you have to meet them in the corridor. So that was a big issue as well. We also came across workload as quite an important factor for school leaders as well. And just to go back to the conflict again, I hope I'm not talking too much here.
No, do it.
But I thank you. But one of the interesting things that we found as well, and we call it this balkanization. Now, that may not mean a lot to other people, but Balkans is a group of countries in Europe which split apart from each other. And I guess a better way of describing it would be teachers break into different cliques, into different groups. And they sometimes find favor with school leaders, sometimes not. But very importantly, the micropolitics of the school can very often guide the school in a particular direction. So I guess there's some of the kind of main findings that we found, you know?
Okay. And do you feel like, maybe your research didn't really get at this, but do school leaders, are they in a particular position where they're in more conflict versus other types of organizations? Are there things happening in the school specifically that, you know, are in that context that drive conflict, and it sounds like long-lasting conflict a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I guess conflict is evident in all organizations. There's actually a really good author called OTT, Ott Marshall. She's an American lady. She's done a lot of research into conflict, what she calls transformation. So I guess to answer your question, education is what we consider from the literature a highly stressed environment. There would be other highly stressed environments. Also, health would be a big one, and construction is also a big one. But I guess the characteristics of the school are somewhat a little bit different, certainly in Ireland, from many other places. It's a highly hierarchical institution. So we have a leader of the school. They very often have a deputy leader. Under this, we have teachers who are in a permanent position. Then we have temporary teachers. Then we have teachers who are coming in part-time. So I have quite a hierarchical position. And also, I think the workspace is quite important as well. So this idea that people are bumping into each other all the time. If you're in a construction setting, you might be on a site, you might not see another person for another 6 weeks. But if you're in conflict with another teacher or a school leader, you're going to bump into this person every single day in the corridor, in the class, in the staff room. So I guess there's some characteristics of it, you know?
Yeah. And does that conflict escalate into bullying over time, where one or both individuals starts to feel like they want to get their power back, and bullying would be a way to do
absolutely. That? Yeah, I think if you look at the literature, a lot of literature goes straight into talking about individual workplace misbehavior. So it could be bullying, incivility, mobbing, presenteeism. But what we kind of feel is that before this bullying starts, there is a process that we call interpersonal conflict. And I in Ireland would say someone is just getting on my nerves. Okay, that's how we phrase it. So even if you think just in any organization, I'll pick 3 big things that happened over, say, the last 10 years. So we had the global crisis that's just coming to an end. We had the American presidency, and we also had Brexit, which was a big thing over here in Europe. And these were highly divisive issues, whether you're for one or for the other. They were nearly split in many cases, 50-50 down the middle. So let's say I come in the morning and I say, oh, I think such and such is a great person or a great idea. People are looking at me, they're making judgments on my opinions. Sometimes they're keeping it quite covertly to themselves, and they're going, that person is really annoying me. And this then leads over time to more serious behaviors. They done this, they said this, they think this, and that eventually leads to bullying.
Yeah, I would say so. I do see that as well in my work. What are the implications for this research you've done? What do we do with this now that we know about all this conflict? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, again, another really, really good question. I am not going to sit here and tell you we have a wonderful, perfect solution for this, because the reality is, if you read the literature, there is no silver bullet that is going to resolve all this. Very often, many of the interventions that were introduced in the literature are either unsuccessful or partially successful. A key finding that I wanted to stress as well in our research, which I actually forgot to mention, is the inability for school leaders or teachers to be able to report workplace misbehavior. Now, interestingly, in Ireland, I'm not sure what the law is like in America, but let's say you have a bullying claim. One of the key things about a bullying claim is I must be able to tell you, as my employer, I feel bullied, I feel stressed. But the problem with doing this is very often people were afraid to do this because they might be pigeonholed. They might be told, that person can't cope with stress. We won't consider them for a leadership position, etc., etc. But to answer your question, how do we resolve it? Well, I could say have more CCTV, that we can pick this stuff up. Maybe we can have training. maybe we can have simple things like more separation, maybe a second staff room. There are also non-kind of trendy solutions that we have examined. So there's a guy called Rolf Olsen, I think his name is. He's a Norwegian guy. He considers that backbiting or talking behind people's back is a big precursor to bullying. So he has this simple thing where he gets everyone into a room and everyone voluntarily agrees to sign a non-backbiting charter. And they put that up in the main corridor, cover it in glass, and it's only for a period of time, for 4 or 6 weeks. But the studies have shown that the amount of bullying and stress has gone down hugely as a result of doing kind of a little bit of a corny thing like that. Or if you have two people that are in conflict, get them into a room. Here's a tennis ball. You hold the tennis ball. While you're holding the tennis ball, you can speak.
Yeah.
If I'm not holding, I know they sound ridiculous, but they have been proven in some cases to be actually quite successful. So just to finish, to say, I don't think there's any really amazing solutions out there. Maybe it's a kind of a holistic approach we need, but it definitely needs more research, I think.
Yes, yes. And that's, I'm a practitioner and do a lot of working with organizations to help them figure out what those solutions might be. And there are many, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Everybody, people are complicated, and this is a complicated situation to solve.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
That's why we meet every other year somewhere in the world.
This is it. Yeah, something we noticed as well is that, like what you were saying there, people's personality. So I think there's one of the researchers suggests that we have, 5 personality traits named after ocean, isn't it? Openness, agreeableness, and all these kind of things. And we found people who are quite conscientious tend to be bullied a little bit more than other people, So in a strange way, and it comes over in our study as well, nearly the better people are, the more productive they are, the more actually likely they are to be bullied, which is kind of doesn't really make sense, but that's what we found,
Yeah, I would think it has to do with just I use the word sensitivity, and I don't mean because they're sensitive and, we got to tiptoe around them, but if they're sensitive to emotional intelligence and how people are feeling and they're in tune with that, then I think it would make sense that their tolerance for some aggressive behavior would probably be lower than somebody who's less attuned. I think that probably makes sense. So there's this fine line of teaching people to be emotionally intelligent, but also don't people complicated stuff.
Yeah, it's complicated stuff, absolutely. And what we found as well is that some of the school leaders that are put into a position, they've had no training in any of this. And suddenly there's stuff thrown on their desk about, oh, there's a teacher fighting with another teacher, or there's a leak in the roof or something like that. And they're like, well, I've had no training for this. How do I deal with this? So that's a form of stress as well,
Yeah. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I'm really looking forward to your presentation here in San Diego in September 2022. Again, I'm Catherine, International Association on Workplace Bullying and Harassment Conference Chair. Join us. We'd love to see smiling faces there. Let's have some more conversations about this. So thank you again, Patrick.
Thanks a million, Catherine. Have a nice evening. Take care of yourself. Take care.